For those of you who are listening in on YouTube as well as Facebook Live, salam sejahtera, good evening, selamat malam kepada semua. It's 8:32 now. My name is Ong Kian Ming. Wow, so fast got hand up. My name is Ong Kian Ming, Member of Parliament for Bangi in Selangor, and representing the DAP and Pakatan Harapan. Really glad to have my old friend here with me, Wong Ming, to talk about the recent Melaka state elections. Fook Ming is a lawyer by profession, and he's one of the few, he studied in UM and one of the few UM lawyers who chose to go back to Melaka to serve the community there. And I think he's somebody who's very civic-minded. He, was a councilor in the Majlis Tuah Jaya for about 20 months. And then, he's a keen observer of what happens in Melaka, the good, the bad, and the future, I should say, not the ugly. Yeah, for me, you want to say anything else to introduce yourself to the people who are listening?
Yeah, it's so good to do this together with you, Kian Ming. I think I know Kian Ming since 2000 when Kian Ming still had hair. And
correct.
right, and Kian Ming at the time you were, I think, more a political commentator. You were writing a lot of articles in Malaysia Kini, just from the sidelines, looking out from outside into politics, and then you went into politics. And yeah, Kian Ming, just to start the evening, I'm just always curious because after what has happened in Malacca, right, a lot of people are weighing in, especially political commentators, academicians, and all that. You were doing that role before, and but you're also in the fray. You're inside the game. But by becoming a politician, does it change your perception of what's happening in any way? Because a lot of us tonight, I think, we are looking from the outside into what has happened in Malacca, but you have been outside and also inside.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question to start because when I read the different analysis by different commentators, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, I'm able to discern better which points are more relevant, which points may not be so relevant. And I think we can discuss some of those points also during our discussion. Right. And then from the inside, I can see which are the points that would have more traction within, let's say, my own party, within Pakatan Harapan. And then which are the points that maybe are more sensitive, which are the points that probably will be ignored. So, right. And then when I write also, I put on my analyst hat a bit, but I'm also trying to shape the political narrative, not just for the public, and I shared an article that I wrote, press statement that I wrote this morning, right. But also for some of my colleagues within my own party and coalition, to let them look at things from a different point of view, not to see everything so bleak, but at the same time also ask them to do some soul searching. Right. Ask all of us, including myself. So right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, how about you, for me? I mean, maybe we can start off with maybe just before the campaign itself, right? When there was speculation that there was going to be a possible change in government in Melaka, with some people from the then government, with PN as well as with BN, wanting to leave and withdraw support. What were your feelings?
Well, you see, I think the Pakatan Harapan has always been talking about anti-hopping and all that. So when this news broke out, I think quite a number of us we were quite against it, and we were actually quite surprised when Pakatan Harapan seems to be basically for it, and the four defectors came over, obviously with the cooperation with Pakatan Harapan. So that took us by surprise, and I think that basically was the thing that affected the mood of a lot of the voters, because I think Pakatan Harapan has kind of in a way lost a moral high ground in cooperating with the four defectors.
Yeah, maybe just to give you a bit of insight, and of course, what I say here, I'm not sure whether it'll be highlighted in the press. I think there may have been some desire on the part of some Pakatan Harapan leaders to bring down the BN UMNO-led government in Melaka without maybe necessarily thinking about the consequences. because of the failure of Pakatan Harapan to get to sort of like get enough votes to get Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim voted in as a prime minister after the fall of the Muhyiddin government. So there may have been wanting to play this kind of game of I lost that time, so I need to get a win to make myself or to make my coalition continue to be relevant. Frankly, on hindsight, I do think that was a mistake because I think many people did not anticipate that that the end fellows will go to the governor and ask for the state assembly to be dissolved.
Right.
Because once that possibility was there on the table, then we know that turnout is going to be low, COVID and all that. Then definitely it will be disadvantageous for Pakatan Harapan. But I mean, did you think that the state assembly will be dissolved at that time?
I didn't think so, because we thought that basically there will be a new government that's taking over because of the COVID-19 and all that. So we thought there won't be any dissolution. So that came as quite a surprise.
Yeah. See, one problem in the calculation is that if we had worked together with the four frogs, one of them would have been that Nurhizam guy from DAP, formerly from the DAP. And he's, from my limited interactions with him, he's not somebody that can be trusted.
Right.
Yeah, I share an anecdotal story, not anecdotal story. I share a sort of like a story that sort of like shows you what kind of person he is. This was when Pakatan Harapan was still in power, and we were having a leaders retreat in the DAP, MPs and aduns. So I was standing there together with Anthony. Anthony was the Minister of Transport. I was the Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade at the time. We were just standing, listening to other leaders speak, standing at the side of the hall. And then this Nurhizam came up to Anthony, and he said something like, "YB, saya nak nombor." So like to me, I was like, ni nak nombor apa? Nak nombor 4 ekor ke? And then I was like, then they continue talking that. Oh, I realized that this guy actually wanted those special number plates, right? Patriot or whatever, that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So that he could, I don't know whether he's going to sell it off or he's going to put it on his own car or whatever, But like, he's so brazen, go up straight up. This is what I want, right? And that's not the way DAP does things, we that's not a point we became government,
Right.
So I mean, the fact that we would have been forced to work with somebody like him to form a new state government, and he may have had to come back to become an exco because the margins would have been 15-13.
That's right.
It's quite hard, It's quite hard for me to have imagined there to be a good solution from that, But anyway, that's water under the bridge. Let's go straight to the campaign now, What are your impressions of the campaign from a perspective of somebody who was in Melaka during that 10 days to 2 weeks?
No, it's very different from like the last GE because there's no jarama. When there's jarama, physical gathering, you can sense the mood and the electricity in the air. I remember just days before the last GE, Mahathir came to town, and then there was a huge, gathering of people, and those kind of things kind of like buoy the mood of the people. So this time is very quiet. So it's very difficult, I think, for political parties to reach out to the electorate. But I see a lot of social media campaigning and all that. And then in Melaka, in our own ways, we did some Zoom like this with Hannah Yo and with Steven's team. So I thought the Zoom interaction was quite good because it's two-way communication, whereas Charama is a very one-way thing. Yep. I think what could have been better is probably maybe a more solid narrative by Pakatan in terms of reaching out to the people and saying that if we take over government, this is our narrative, this is basically what we're going to do, our manifesto and all that. Maybe make it clearer at that way. But I think that was all a lot clouded by issues of the 4 defectors and all that.
Yeah. So actually, going to the 4 going back to the 4 defectors, I think them defecting and causing the fall of the Melaka state government is one thing. But then the next move came whereby 2 of them were accepted in. as candidates for Pakatan Harapan, including for the former Menteri Besar, or Chief Minister rather, Idris Harun.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, from like a Melakan's perspective and the people that you were talking to, what kind of impact did that have on the mood of the people?
For the people I talked to, very negative, because basically, I think it's too fresh because they just defected and then they are now being put in as candidates. Of course, Ali was trying to say, well, even Mahathir came out from UMNO, Anwar came out from UMNO, so it's quite normal to take people from the other side. But I think because it came over too suddenly, and I think they do not maybe enjoy a lot of popularity, especially among people in the town area. So it didn't really go well with the people. Yeah.
What do you think of the argument that some Amanah leaders in KL were putting forth to say that we accept them because they were principled political frogs? Does that have any credibility in your eyes?
I think that people are quite mature nowadays. They know what are the real reasons why people come over, and they will kind of like read in between the lines and see whether someone is trying to make or create their own moral high ground. I mean, everybody who comes, who defects will come up with their own moral high ground, right? But people will also try to see in between the lines and see whether there are personal reasons for the defection.
Yeah. So actually, the electorate is much. We have to give the electorate more credit, lah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, so for the record, I think Yok Chua says principal frog my foot. I agree lah. And David took a very strong position against the inclusion of these frogs as candidates. But within Harapan, both PKR as well as Amanah wanted to take them in. They may have other political considerations, but I think the fact that Idris Harun did not do very well even in the seat that he contested in, and the other candidate also lost, shows that even their base is not that strong, and they were not really very impactful in terms of shifting the vote in some of the Malay rural areas towards PH.
That's right.
Yeah. There's a question here on signing the MOU. I'll come back to the MOU later. We will cover a lot of these issues that you have asked, in our discussion, because we're going by chronology. We talk about the situation before the elections. Now we're talking about the campaign, and then after that we'll talk about results, and then also talk about the issues, and also the way forward. Yeah. Okay, so maybe you can zoom in a little bit more on the candidates. Of course, there's a lot of candidates, but I think the ones that we're familiar with probably are those that are contesting in the urban areas. Right. So what was your feeling when the candidates were announced by all the different parties?
Well, I think as far as the DAP is concerned, we were quite happy to see young people like Danish being fielded in Pangkalan Batu. Right. It was quite a surprise for Tay Kok Yew to go to Perbandaran, of course, because that seems to be a very dangerous seat. And then we have people who were dropped like Dr. Wong, and then also Jeannie Lim. So that kind of caused quite a lot of consternation, especially among their supporters. And yeah, I think as a whole, the candidates will go. A lot of incumbents were contesting, and I think a lot of people feel that incumbents should always be given a priority, because every day of them working in the past 3 years plus is a day of campaigning, right? For the coming election.
Yeah. Actually, based on my experience in politics for 2 terms, being an incumbent has its strengths and weaknesses. Okay. If your track record is good, then it becomes a strength.
Right.
But if your track record is not so good, right, then it becomes a liability. Right. So I think in evaluating the candidates to field, or whether or not to allow the incumbents to be retained in their respective seats, or to be shifted somewhere else, or to be dropped, I think the party has all these kinds of considerations in their minds. Right. So I think there was somebody who said, Dr. Wong should have been, should have continued to be fielded in Bemban. I'm not sure whether that person is from Bemban or not, but I'm sure that my party leaders would have consulted the local machinery and done the walkabouts to talk to the locals to evaluate whether the incumbent should remain, or perhaps a new candidate should have been fielded.
Right.
Yeah.
There were also quite a lot of independents who contested this time, although none of them won. But it's quite interesting to see people coming in as independents as well. Even in the Bemban seat from Ng Chung Kun, who was
former MCA guy.
Oh,
I think he joined the DAP thinking that perhaps he could contest in that seat in the next general election.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not privy to the internal machinations of candidate selection because I'm not part of the committee in the DAP that does the candidate selection, but I hear feedback from different sources, and I also give some feedback according to what I hear. So I think it was I think all in all it was a pretty good lineup. You had strong incumbents in places like Air Keroh as well as Kesidang. And then for Bandar Hilir and Kota Laksamana, those are strong DAP seats lah. So whoever you feel from the DAP would win.
Right.
And then Duyong, I think Damien always face an uphill task there. Tough seat, mixed seat, 60% Malay. And then Bengkalan Batu, we fielded a new candidate, Danish, young Malay graduate from UiTM. And then also we had a lady, fielded lady in Kota Laksamana. And then Gadek was always going to be a tough seat. And then for Sami, I think a lot of credit has got to go to him because he was in jail for a long time. Right? So he couldn't service his voters. And once he came out, then it was a Sheraton move already. So he lost the exco privileges. So the fact that I think he did a very credible job in Kadek together with the help of our DP colleagues from Negeri Sembilan, I think it's at least gives us hope for the next general election that we can fight this state seat.
Right. But did it surprise you, Ming, because out of the 8 seats, DAP only won the 4 traditional seats. Did it come as a surprise?
It was a bit underwhelming. I thought that maybe Duyong and Bengkalan Batu we had a fighting chance lah. Right. And I think the results showed that Duyong and Bengkalan Batu were relatively close. I thought Gadek, a lot of this really depends on the turnout, right? And the turnout wasn't actually as low as I thought. I thought it would be like 50%. At most maybe 55 to 55%, but yeah, it was between it was slightly over 60%. So that may have helped a bit in terms of getting the margins closer, but wasn't enough because the GE14 the turnout rate was 85%. Right? So you're talking about 20% of voters in a seat that's, let's say 20,000, right? 20% of voters is 4,000 votes. Out of which, let's say we win 80%, right? That's 3,200 votes versus 800. That's a majority, of about 2,000, 2,400. So you're losing about 2,000 votes, 2,000 plus votes, even before the election starts. So it's always going to be difficult, like those marginal seats. Yeah. So yeah. How about after the candidates, the campaign itself? I mean, you mentioned that the mood was not very strong.
Yes.
No compelling narrative. But how about, let's say, from the BN side? How did you feel? Or the PN side, how did you feel their campaign was? Moving along. Did you get a sense of how they were campaigning?
Well, basically, the normal posters and flags and all that. But I think beyond the campaigning, they have a very strong machinery. That's what I understand. So they have the kind of, from what I was told, they have a one man mark 10 men. So one man will take care of 10%, this 10% will take care of another 10%. So they have this very slick machinery that gets people out on their voting day. So they are very disciplined voters. So they may not have a lot of rah-rah thing, but on election day, they'll be out there to cast their votes. I think that's one of their key competitive advantages compared to Pakatan.
Yeah, so in this respect, I think the BN, especially UMNO, has always had that kind of advantage lah.
Yes.
Especially in the rural areas, I think we have to give them credit lah. Yes. A lot of people say it's about money. Yes, I think money and resources does play a role. But from what I've seen, even in my constituency, and definitely more relevant in the rural constituencies, right? The networks, the sort of like ties, community ties that you have in the kampong areas and all that, those are actually very, very important.
Right.
Yeah, and this obviously applies to UMNO, but it also applies to PAS. Although PAS is not as strong in a place like Melaka, but they still have they won 11% of the popular vote in GE14 as a third-party candidates. So they do still have some influence. And then of course, Bersatu, you have a lot of people who are formerly from UMNO, right? So they also would be able to try to utilize some of these networks, although their ground game is definitely not as strong as UMNO.
PKR and Amanah are supposed to go into the Malay heartland, right? And to win the Malay votes. What do you think happened there?
Okay, so I think it's tough going for Amanah and PKR because they are sort of like people who come maybe a bit later to the game, right? PAS, they have their masjid networks, right? Amanah, it will be difficult for Amanah to penetrate those networks in the rural areas. And then for UMNO, you're talking about many years of being close via institutions such as the MPKK, the Ketua Kampungs, the Penghulus, So all these community leaders, they already have strong ties with the UMNO establishment and the UMNO party machinery. So if let's say PKR and Amanah were to come in, they actually need to replicate or replace or compete at this kind of local leadership level. It's not just your machinery in terms of who you bring in. You may bring in people from KL, you may bring in people from the town area. They will be able to help you do things like put flags, organize events, and things like that. But in terms of actual community ties, right, you actually need to have those local leaders that can help you open doors and facilitate conversations, especially in a context where you cannot have ceramahs, right? These kind of face-to-face and human ties become much more important.
Right.
Yeah. So and that will be a factor that will continue to be important even in GE15, especially if let's say we anticipate, and some of you have also said this in the chat, anticipate that the turnout may be low or may continue to be low. Yeah.
Was it true that Barisan didn't really get much of the younger Malay votes? Most of the votes came from the older?
Yeah, that would be their more traditional base. Younger voters, I think Malay voters, I need to look at the Salaran results. I think they would still have voted more for the BN, but maybe that in those areas, maybe some of them may not have been happy with the way the whole COVID situation has been handled. So they may have looked for alternatives. But because PH wasn't that strong on the ground, so their alternative may have been Bersatu or PN. Right, so they saw Bersatu and PN as maybe the opposition or the alternative to PN and UMNO. But I need to look at the Salaran result first. That one will take maybe about another week or so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Shanti is saying during the campaign you could sense the presence of PN in the community. Had a lot of kedai kopi session, and this is where I think BN is much stronger. In this kind of outreach. For us, especially for DAP, right, we are like touch and go. We go to the coffee shop, we say hi, we give the leaflet, then we are off to the next place already, right? Whereas I think for a lot of these kedai kopi, right, you need to sit there for hours to talk, to chat, and then they probably have their own WhatsApp groups, to be able to, spread out the message in their own respective areas as well. Yeah. So, did you go down and look at some of the campaigns to limited degree Did you have follow any of the candidates on any walkabouts or things like that?
Didn't really get to do that. Of course, I do follow them on their Facebook. Yeah. So, but physically, not really. Yeah.
Okay. How about the reaction from the Zoom meetings that you held with Hannah as well as Stephen? How was the interaction like?
Yeah, there were a lot of questions. I think people were basically, I think the key issue again was the defection and all that. So I think Hannah and Stephen handled that very well. And like you say, it's water under the bridge. What is important is to look ahead and see what's the hope. So I think the main challenge, especially for the Chinese voters, was that people do not want to come out to vote. So we made that basically the focal point of our Zoom campaigns to say that you must at least come back and vote. And don't lose hope, because if you lose hope, then there's basically nothing left. So you must at least come and make your voice heard.
Correct. Yeah. So I think that was something that DAP focused a lot on to convince people to come back to vote. But at the same time, I can't help but think that the narrative, whether at the national or the state level, to give a reason for people to come back to vote or to present a compelling sort of like a vision for what PH state government would be like if we had won the state elections. that seemed to be not very strongly communicated. Would you agree?
Yeah, maybe there was not enough to basically raise the mood, so to speak, because I think a lot of PH supporters are more sentiment driven, and there was perhaps not enough to basically raise the mood and basically have that clarion call to get people to come back and vote. Not like the last GE, where I think there were many more issues which basically get people more excited and more involved.
Yeah, 1MDB, GST,
That's
Rosma,
right. That's right.
Yeah, and then Mate also, and things like that. Actually, I'm curious. I mean, I think people obviously look at these kind of big national issues, even the MOU, and I think somebody brought it up in the chat group just now also, and I'll talk about that later. But you know, there's also this need to sort of like say, you know, communicate certain policy direction for Melaka as a state. And these things usually don't capture the public attention, and they're seen as quite boring. But do you think these are things that are important, you know, in terms of building up the larger narrative and to showcase the difference between the different political parties?
Yes, definitely. I think basically for the business community especially, there's basically something that DAP can do better to show that you can have business-friendly policies, you can have basically the ability to attract more foreign direct investment to Melaka. Those are the key things that the business community will be looking at. Which is something that I think the Pakatan can do better. When Pakatan came to power, I think Pakatan basically does well with the grassroots and people, the ordinary man on the street. But there can be a better, you know, collaborative effort maybe. I always believe that if you want to build a city or a state, there must be a collaboration between the government, the private sector, and the NGO, so that all these three can come together and have a collaborative model to build the state. So if we can have something like that, then I think people will be more excited.
Yeah. Actually, you mentioned two good points there. One is sort of like the message to the business community.
Yes.
And then second thing is actually the different models or initiatives for collaborative kind of initiatives, including with the NGOs, maybe more on social outreach and things of that nature. I want to touch on the outreach to the business community.
Yes.
Like for one of the things that I discussed with some of my colleagues in Melaka would be things like you know, job opportunities.
Yes.
Right. This is something that's very important to Melaka because you lose out a lot of talent to either KL or to Singapore.
That's right.
And one of the things that I brought up was Melaka is actually a pretty good location to set up support services for MNCs and other service-oriented companies for, you know, this for business services. Right. So one of the things that I brought up, I'm not sure whether you're aware of this. There's actually an accounting firm, sorry, that's based in Singapore. They obviously have a Malaysian partnership, but they subcontract some of their business or support services kind of work, you know, document checking, document verification, that kind of stuff, to their branch in Melaka. Are you aware of this?
Yeah, what was the...
I don't want to say the name of the
Okay,
company,
yeah, I think I know someone who actually worked there. Yes.
It's one of the big four, It's one of the big four.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Right. So it's actually sort of like the arm of the Singapore branch. It's not the arm of the Malaysian branch because it's basically serving the Singapore market.
Right.
Right. So for some of these business services or shared services kind of activities, right? KL and Klang Valley is by and large leading the way. Penang is actually in second place. There are some smaller MNCs that have chosen Penang because they want a lower cost of operations, and they also want to support some of the E&E companies that are in Penang. Right? But for Melaka, this is actually something that you know, we could have put in as part and parcel of the economic strategy. Another area is actually to do things related to you know, digital kind of job opportunities, but more focused on niche areas that Melaka would be better in. So digital services and development of digital services for the tourism sector, right? You know, for tourism related products. So not to compete with you know, I want to set up a R&D center for Grab in Melaka. You won't have that kind of human resource. but some of these smaller initiatives, and this is something that my colleague Howard Lee was trying to do in Ipoh as well. So, Melaka, would have some of these advantages. You start small and then you let it grow,
Right.
So I think those kind of narratives is something that we can discuss
Yes.
further on, as part of a larger brainstorming for the state.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I think fresh initiatives like that will basically breathe a lot of life into the economy. I think basically that's what people want to see, especially the young voters, because they want job opportunities, they want to have a future in Melaka. So yeah, that should be part of the narrative.
Yeah, and you talk about young voters, other things that they would be interested in would be things like affordable housing, for example, right? So what is the state government's position on having sustainable policies, cooperating with the federal government to have affordable housing zones, perhaps? And if, let's say, the Melaka Gateway project is to be revived in any shape or form, then you don't want it to be just a place for foreign people to go and buy up one property, and then they don't live there. Why not turn it into some sort of affordable housing? You can have zones where you can invite artists to come and stay at subsidized rates. You can create these kinds of artistic communities. It may not be people who are just doing the visual arts. It can be performers. It can be it's a creative industry that I think wouldn't mind the kind of vibrancy that Melaka can provide, especially downtown, right?
Yeah,
so I think these are ideas that we can discuss.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that will give a soul to the life of the city, creative arts and all that. That's something that's very good. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Unfortunately, because of the short campaign period and the circumstances surrounding the campaign, it would have been hard to really communicate this in a more convincing manner. But we still have time for the next general or state elections.
Right.
Okay. Maybe you can go to the results. Anything else that you want to share with regards to the campaign that you want to?
No, not really.
Okay, maybe we can go to the results. Yeah, people talk. Okay, somebody asked, DP lost 4 seats. Get to comment. How can we avoid such trends in the next general election? Actually, I think a lot of people forget that the 4 seats that we won were seats that we had won in the past. 2 stronghold seats, Kota Laksamana as well as Bandar Hileh, very high Chinese percentage, and then Kesidang and Ayer Keroh, about 50 to 60% Chinese. Mixed seats, still relatively safe seats, but the other 4 seats, except for Pengkalan Batu before the delimitation when it was called Bachang, we won it once before. We meaning DAP. Bemban, Gade, even Duyong, these are seats that DAP has not won in the past, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not, you shouldn't expect that DAP would be able to automatically win these seats. These are tough seats, especially when the turnout rate is low, especially when our machinery may not be so good to reach out to the Malay voters in the rural areas, right? I think it's definitely something that we need to work on. Yeah. Were you surprised by the fact that PKR didn't win any seats at all?
Yeah, I thought at least they could have won like 2 or 3 seats, like in Machat, in Klebang. Yeah, at least. So yeah, it was quite surprising that out of 11, they could not win any seat.
Yeah. Maybe not sure whether you would be in a position to comment on this, but do you think that the PH outreach to the Malay voters, whether it's urban or rural, what ways in which could that have been improved on? Because right now we are talking to the converted, many people here are basically non-Malays and also living in the urban areas. How do you think we can improve our improve DAP's outreach and also PH's outreach to the Malay voters?
I think basically, if you want to, like you say, the traditional, the traditional strongholds are people who are more elderly. So perhaps you have to have a more targeted approach, especially to the younger Malays, and show them that if you are in government, you can basically provide better jobs, better housing, a better future, a better narrative, for Melaka. So I think that has to be the kind of engagement, especially with the younger voters. There should be a more targeted approach in that direction. And I think maybe also in terms of the manner of the outreach, do not have to always be that serious, traditional, very political thing. Well, I think most people are not that engaged in partisan politics, right? So you have to talk about very normal day-to-day life, everyday living kind of thing that can relate to people.
Actually, that's a very good point. Like, it would be interesting to actually ask younger people, hey, during the MCO, what were you doing?
Yeah.
Just as a reflection on the kind of challenges that they face, right?
Right.
Us in KL or maybe in the urban areas, especially like the professionals, right? You can afford to have a good internet at home. You can get Netflix and watch Netflix. And not to say that's not relevant. Some younger people also actually get onto the internet to watch different things, YouTube and all that.
Yes.
But that would have been something that's a little bit more different, a little bit more direct. It's not so hard-hitting politics, not talking about one MDB or Najib all the time.
That's right.
Something more relaxing.
That's right.
Yeah, like for me, before the MCO started, I went to buy a PlayStation 4. So I spent quite a lot of time playing PlayStation, and realized that actually there are a lot of young people and also middle-aged people who are playing these games. Of course, younger people now will play the mobile games like League of Legends and things like that.
Right.
Although parents may not be so positive in terms of hearing about their kids play all these things, but I think it would have been interesting to maybe get one of the candidates to go and play Dota,
yes,
engage with the people that way.
That's right. And in the speeches, if you talk about the mobile games that you all play, I think that will resonate with a lot of younger voters, because then they will see that basically you can identify with what they're going through and what they're doing, and that you understand them.
Yeah. Actually, you talk about sort of like other activities. I was a little bit I'm on hindsight, thinking about it, I'm a bit regretful because there were two events that I was planning with some of the candidates from the DAP that didn't materialize. The first one was I wanted to go jogging with a couple of the younger candidates, just to show that DAP is a vibrant, healthy party, and I think that also can present something that's a little bit more normal, not so political, not so shaking hands and things like that.
Right.
But for different reasons, that didn't materialize. And it's something that I enjoy doing. I go and exercise quite a lot in my own constituency. You're welcome to come and run in my new running track in Bangi anytime.
Looking forward.
And then and then the other thing that I wanted to do was to actually take a couple of kayaks down Sungai Melaka. To basically look at the areas which are frequently flooded, to look at where how things can be improved in terms of building river bunds, maybe look at places where the land may have eroded away, or places where the land may have been some of the silting in the river has taken place. And I actually did it for my own constituency, in Bangi. Really, and I did about 1.5 hour kayak down Sungai Langat, and I did it broadcasted live on Facebook, and got some attention from my voters. So I thought that would have been something that could have been done, since campaigning quite boring in the second week already. Yeah, but unfortunately that didn't materialize. Do you think that those kind of things would have sort of like given a different kind of flavor to the campaign?
Yeah, I think it will give a lot of freshness to the campaign to reach out in very different ways, because I think both sides were using very traditional ways of reaching out, and everybody seems to go to the kedai kopi, everybody seems to go to the warung, and that seems to be the normal staple. But if you can have innovative ways to reach out to people and to show that you're just one of them, you can cycle with them, you can run with them, you can kayak with them, I think there will be resonance, especially among the younger voters.
Yeah. So something to take note of. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Shanti, yes, language is important. Speak better Malay language, be more inclusive. I think, one of the strengths of DAP is that we have people who can speak in different languages. Of course, I can't speak Tamil, but in my constituency, which is a Malay majority constituency, I speak Malay most of the time. To the Chinese voters, I speak Mandarin most of the time, right? So yeah, I think it's something that we probably need to do more of, especially in terms of communicating to the Malay voters, speaking more Malay, and having more material, having more viral clips through WhatsApp and YouTube that can reach out to the Malay voters, especially the younger ones.
Yeah. And I also think that nothing beats like the hard day-to-day work by people who are on the ground. So I was having coffee with Damien yesterday, and he said that when he went around in Duyong, what he did was when he gave all those packs of food and all that, he will actually spend about 10 minutes in each home and try to speak to them and talk to them and basically getting to know them. So I think it goes beyond whatever so-called, sometimes people say gimmicks. It's very to show that you're a real person and you really care for people. I think nothing will beat that.
The personal touch.
The personal touch.
Yeah, actually, I mean, going back to that, the personal touch thing, actually, it's quite important. Like for me as an elected rep, right? My constituency currently has 194,000 voters. It's crazy lah. Hard to get and reach out to majority of them. But for some of the cases where I feel some sort of a personal connection, when they do have requests, I do keep it at the back of my mind, and not just subcontract it to my assistant. So, for example, I helped this girl get a scholarship to go to Imperial College to do her master's that will lead to a PhD. She's from University Malaysia Pahang. She's now in London. But when she came to stay in KL before she took her flight to London, her friend is actually somebody who lives in my constituency. So I met up with the family for a bit, and one of the things that this friend of hers told her was that the brother likes to play football, but he cannot find a football team, right, to play, and then because MCO and all that cannot play lah. So I kept that in the back of my mind. So the next time I receive those allocation requests, peruntukan requests lah, from a football team that is in Bangi. So I say, okay, let me put this guy in touch with this football team, so that at least he can explore this potential opportunity lah, and something may happen from that lah. So actually, all these kinds of things are just like, if you keep it at the back of your mind, there will be occasions whereby you can come out and try to help these people, the voters in your respective areas, regardless of race, religion, identity. Yeah. Okay. There's somebody who said just now, May 1, so football games would be good, and then after that, drinks and makan to understand the needs of people.
Yeah.
So for Ming, your futsal how? Nowadays, football harder. Futsal, you can play futsal or not?
Can. Haven't played for a while due to MCO, but yeah, that would be lovely, playing futsal with people and all that.
Yeah, I think I still can play futsal, basketball. My basic fitness is still there lah, so still can do some of these things lah. Yeah. And then Maywan said, agree, outreach should be in everyday life that expresses real concern. That's the football one. And then another clown. I'm not calling somebody another clown, but this is what his name is. Written. Yeah, when outreach is heightened during election campaign, people start to doubt your sincerity, that you're only interested in my vote rather than in helping me. Yeah. So just to share this story for you guys here, because most of you are from Melaka. I got some allocation from the federal government last time when PH was still in power to upgrade a running track in my area, and I undertook the project myself. And I completed it sometime in April this year lah. So I use the track. I go there to run. I go there to exercise. I try to organize some events there as well, training activities for the community. So most of the people who go there and see me and recognize me, they know that I'm there. I'm the one responsible for upgrading the track. So some of them will come to me and say, thank you, YB, good job, this and that. And then, I will also tell them, hey, let's try to maintain the track together, keep it in good condition and things like that. So I think, these kinds of things, after I've done all these things, right, in the next general election, if I have the chance to stand in Bangi again, I don't need to, do a gimmick at the track. When I go there, people already know that this is my contribution to the community. Right. So I think these kinds of examples, I think if they can be replicated, I think would be good for, not just, it would be good for politics in general, to make sure that everyone is, more people in politics are sincere and not just after gimmicks.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Moving ahead, a lot of issues that have been brought up, leadership issues, whether or not to use the common logo, Pakatan Harapan, or use PKR logo, the whole issue of whether or not to continue the MOU or not. Maybe we start with the logo first.
Yes.
In your opinion, do you think it would have made a difference if, let's say, Pakatan Harapan had used the PKR logo instead of the PH logo?
It may have made a negative difference. I think basically the PH logo was much better. because it's more inclusive. Whereas if you use a PKR logo, then I think it's very narrow. But I think the problem on the ground, from what I understand, is that some people were looking for the DAP logo. So they were a bit confused when you changed the Pakatan Harapan logo.
Yeah, mostly among the older voters, I think. Yeah, but I think most of the time, their relatives or their kids would tell them which is the coalition that DAP belongs to.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can see in the results, because like for Kota Laksamana and Bandar Hilir, which has a high percentage of older voters, right? The percentage of vote won by the DAP and candidates is more or less the same as G14. There's no significant drop. Right. So, there may be some confusion initially, but after a while, it'll sort itself out. Okay, so, and the other thing about the logo is that if, let's say, if the argument is that the PKR logo is more recognizable than the PH logo, you think about it, Perikatan National logo has been around for even shorter, right? And it's even less well known compared to PAS, right? But using the PN logo, the PN was able to win double the amount of votes, percentage of votes compared to PAS, right? And in a seat like Bemban, for example, right? It's like they've never won it before PN. PAS is a Bersatu candidate or PAS candidate. And they won that seat, albeit in a three-corner fight, it was quite close. But people who go and vote would bother to get and find out which logo belongs to which party. That's my impression.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Then the other thing is after the logo, the issue of the MOU lah. What do you think? Do you think the fact that the PH signed the MOU with the government actually leads a lot of people to think that we are afraid to criticize the federal government and to keep them as a check and balance?
Basically, there's no more differentiation, right? So
correct.
Because you signed the MOU. I think locally, that's not much of an issue. That's not much of a local issue in Melaka. But definitely, I think for me, it may even be something positive, because people are very tired sometimes. Political fatigue has been mentioned as one of the big things that cause a low voter turnout. And I think people are quite tired with a lot of fighting among politicians. So I think to a lot of level-minded people, the MOU is something good, because we need to really, come together in a bipartisan manner and to try to save the country first from COVID and then fight later, during the next GE.
Yeah. Actually, on this point, I think one of this is sort of like a 101 psychology way of looking at things. I think a lot of the public who say that, oh, you shouldn't sign the logo with the current government, it sort of like makes you less likely to criticize them, blah blah blah. They are looking at things from maybe two related angles. I think firstly, PH has not done a good enough job in explaining to the larger public and these people who criticize the MOU of the way in which the MOU can deliver longer-term institutional reforms, right? So things like the anti-hopping law, having more parliamentary select committees, also importantly, making sure that in the future there will be some sort of a guarantee that even if you're in opposition, you're still you're still eligible to receive the same allocation from the federal government or the state government in some cases, and we'll talk about that later for Melaka. So that's one thing. I think PH needs to do a much better job explaining to the public. Then the second related reason, I think, is also because the public who wants to see PH, move forward and have a better performance leading up to the next general election, they also put a lot of their own frustrations on the lack of PH's ability to move forward on the MOU. So they blame all of PH's failings on the MOU, or at least part of it. They say, oh, you cannot get your act together to come up with a manifesto or come up with an alternative narrative because you signed the MOU with the government already, right? But actually, there's nothing to prevent the PH from coming up with our own manifesto and our own narrative, alternative narrative. It's just that we have not done it. Right? So therein lies the problem. And those are things which I think we can try to address by looking at some of the root causes and not by having the very sort of like knee-jerk reaction to say that, oh, the MOU is the cause of these problems, then we just get rid of the MOU lah. Oh, you get rid of the MOU, what may happen is that firstly, the institutional reforms that you want to work together with the government will not materialize, number one. And they may not, the chances of it materializing after the next general election would even be less, especially if, let's say, the second thing happens, which is you don't have the MOU, and then the UMNO will say, okay lah, no more MOU, we call for general election. And then the turnout will be low, no cheramas, blah, blah, blah. Everything that happened in Melaka will happen at the national level. And, you can see the results, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So actually, the anti-hopping legislation was one of the results of the MOU, right? Which I think a lot of people still don't know about. And they don't know that there's actually slated to be tabled, I think, in March next year.
Yes. So the negotiations are still happening. There's obviously constitutional issues involved. But UMNO wants it because they've been burned by it before. And this is a unique opportunity for us to present something like that. And I think, sometimes, of course, as leaders in political parties, we need to understand what the ground is saying. We need to hear what people are giving, what feedback people are giving to us. But at the same time, you asked me earlier, my reading of the situation now that I'm an insider. Right? Last time I was just looking for outside. Now I'm an insider. I can actually absorb whatever that's being given from the outside, process it in a more holistic manner, and then to be able to come back to the public and say, yes, I hear your concerns, but at the same time, this is the larger picture that we are facing. This is the larger challenge that we're facing. COVID, low turnout, we need to buy some more time, right? So, the last thing that we want to happen is to have a general election in the first half of next year. Even though that is what UMNO probably wants. Right? So I think this is something that a lot more needs to be done in terms of convincing the public.
So would you, is it your experience that sometimes voters have this unrealistic expectation that they want things to be done yesterday, and reforms must come, immediately, those kind of things. They want quick fixes.
Yeah, this is sort of like a challenge that larger societies are facing right now, right? You want to have instant gratification. So, you want everything to be done or given to you yesterday, right? Especially, when we live in this kind of fast food society. But these kind of reforms take a long time, whether it's, now or 20 years ago, right? And the chances of them happening now is much higher because, even the government is divided and weak. The different coalitions actually need to work with us in order to get whatever the reforms that they want to get through. Even this constitutional amendment on MA 63, the Sarawakian and the Sabahan GPS, GRS, they need PHS support, so to get through the 2/3 mark to get the constitutional amendment done. So we might as well use this time that's been given to us. Hopefully, at least half a year, maybe a year or more, to get these kinds of things done at the parliamentary level. And hopefully, if we can get it done, buy some more time, before the next general election, people can see that, this is the reason why you had the MOU, and we are, able to be more convinced that this is something good for the country.
Right.
Yeah.
There's this question from Tian Xian, because about meaningful progress on institutional reform. She's talking about the gerrymandering, especially I think in Melaka, where popular votes, there's about 177,000 for PH, and then for BN, it was 182,000. So it's just a difference of 5,000, right? But it's 21 to BN and then 5 to PH. So what do you think about this gerrymandering issue?
Yeah. So actually, maybe just a bit of off topic, but the gerrymandering and the delineation thing was something that that myself and Tony Tuah wanted to put in when we talked to people from Muhyiddin's camp. during the first negotiation for the MOU.
Right.
First publicly known negotiation for the MOU lah. First, second, I think that one was probably the third attempt lah.
You got a lot of flag for it.
Yes, we got a lot of flag for it. Hopefully people can see the reason why we proposed that. So that was one of the things that we wanted to propose. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to have a redelineation exercise, it would need some sort of a trigger from the federal government, may require some sort of constitutional amendment to change the number of seats. And the whole exercise would take probably 2 years to complete. So it won't be in time for the next general election. I think I agree that it's something that should be done, but it probably won't. If it's to be done, it'll probably be after the next general election, whatever, and we have to see the results of that. But to that question, Xian's question on meaningful reform, right? This is something that doesn't really affect the man on the street directly, but the fact that we have a couple of additional parliamentary select committees formed, half of which are going to be headed by opposition MPs. I think it's a good start to the federal, to political reforms. And why is this important? I mean, you look at some of the things that the Public Accounts Committee Chairman Wong, the MP for Ipoh Timur is doing. It's actually pretty substantive. Today there was a release of the amount of money that was paid up by the federal government to bail out 2 companies that were doing this AES traffic monitoring and traffic fine system. Right? All these things, doesn't really resonate with the man on the street, but they're important in terms of accountability, check and balance of the government, which is what you guys want the opposition to do in Parliament. So with more opposition MPs heading these parliamentary select committees, there will be more accountability on different areas. The MP for Bandar Kuching, our very young Dr. Kelvin Yee, he is heading the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health and Science and Innovation, right? And during this COVID time, that is actually a very important portfolio. He can call in Kyrie, he can call in the DG to go and question them on different health matters, COVID matters, and they publish a very substantive 200-over-page report on these proceedings, right? So give us a bit more time. I mean, for those of you who are Harapan supporters, look, you said you wanted us to do things yesterday when we were in government. You only gave us, not you, but we were only given 22 months. We did some. So, for example, something that everyone in Melaka can benefit from, but all of you probably won't thank the PH government. When you drive to KL and back, do you know that you've gotten an 18% discount on your Plus Highway toll?
Oh,
do you realize that?
I didn't.
80%.
I haven't used the highway for a long time because of MCO.
Correct. No, but that was one of the last things that we did. We negotiated with this Plus to get them to discount the North Highway tolls by 18%.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's why the numbers come out a bit funny when you do your toll. A lot of people doing the touch and go now, so they don't realize that. But I look out for these things. So actually, you save money from that. We were not able to abolish all the tolls at once, but I think if given time, we would have been able to show more progress. So I think on things like institutional reform, MOU, remember we signed the MOU in September, right? It's just 2 months, less than 2 months, September 13th. 2 months. So, we are not going to be able to get an anti-hopping law done in 2 months. So give us a bit of time. Yeah. Okay. I think it's been an hour already. I think we have to touch on the issue of leadership. I think many people have brought this up already.
Yes.
Yeah. So before I share my views, maybe Fook Ming, you can talk about what you think are some of the concerns of Malakans and also people around you with regards to leadership of PH, and maybe also bring up talk about leadership of the other parties as well, the other coalitions. Right? Because if we want there to be change in the country, it's not just leadership of one coalition that has to change or improve. It's the leadership of all political parties. But maybe you can start with PH first and then go on to the other parties.
I think from what a lot of people are saying on the ground is that they want to see a leadership renewal because there's a lot of people who have been in politics for so long from both sides actually, And I think there are a lot of people are saying there's a time for the younger leaders to arise and have fresh faces and fresh ideas to bring us out from where we are. So, and of course, the fact that Anwar Ibrahim, a lot of people say that he has to take responsibility, especially for the dismal performance in Melaka. So I think leadership renewal is something that a lot of people are talking about, and they want to see fresh people with fresh ideas. And perhaps that's again contributing to the political fatigue where it's always the same thing all over again, and people want to see something different. Yeah. I think even for the other side, of course, there's now all the court cases going on against Zahid and against Najib. Najib's appeal is coming up. The outcome is appeal is coming, I think, on the 8th of December.
December,
yeah. Right? Yeah. So I think equally people are also looking for new leaders who can basically relate more to them, because people are moving away from the mindset of the leader knows all and leader should have all the powers. So people are looking for leaders who are more dynamic, who I think are able to communicate both ways. It's not top down anymore, but be more inclusive in how they build the nation.
I think very many relevant points brought up there, and also in the chat. My sense is that there are two challenges that the more established leaders in this country face. I think the first challenge is the challenge of past baggage, right? So the past baggage can be good and bad. Good in the sense that many of our leaders, people like Lim Kit Siang, for example, they've served the country in a very honorable and distinguished manner. Being very steadfast and also very principled. But the baggage comes in the sense that people have used Kit Siang to scare, let's say, the Malay voters away from DAP and PH because of a lot of this kind of unfair fear mongering, right? So and perhaps with Dato Sri Anwar, it's some of his past cases. It's perhaps the things that he said in the past couple of years, in regards to having the numbers but not having the numbers, right? So I think that actually causes him to lose some credibility in the eyes of many voters, from different races and backgrounds, right? So I think the leaders have to live with that baggage, and they have to evaluate whether or not the positives that they bring to the table in terms of their experience is more than or less than the negative baggage that they bring to the table, especially going to the next general election. I think that's one thing. Second thing is exactly what you say, fresh ideas, right? And to be honest, I've seen this, in Parliament myself, in the sense that, a lot of MPs, they want to latch on to maybe things that are more populist. So trying to use the Najib 100 million allocation of land issue, which some of you have brought up in the chat group, to create, sort of like airtime, to make that into a sort of like a issue for political debate. I don't think at the end of the day it really created much traction in Melaka, although people know about it, and people, I think, naturally disgusted by the whole thing. But the downside of just focusing on these things, right, is a lot of MPs do not have fresh ideas in terms of how to revive the economy, in terms of how to create jobs, in terms of how to bring foreign direct investment. And because they're trapped in this political bubble, right, they don't actually interact with people in the business community, in the NGOs.
Yes.
To get new ideas about new ways of doing things. So, for example, one of the things I find very refreshing about Hannah, right, is that she actually interacts a lot with the different NGOs in her area, and also when she was deputy minister, and she also talks a lot with the affected stakeholders. So she knows about all the challenges that the people who are doing daycares, the people who are doing welfare homes face, right? And she's able to sort of like bring that experience and propose new and fresh ways of doing things, right? But that can't be said of many other leaders, right? So and things like, for example, what I talked about just now, business service support centers and all that. I was fortunate enough to be deputy minister of MITI, and I also have some corporate experience. talking to different professionals. So I'm able to still have some of these external inputs lah, but may not the same kind of access or input points may not be available to everyone, if you know what I mean.
That's right. And also academicians' input are important as well, right? In basically giving more, intellectual kind of input to the politicians. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So, for example, tomorrow I've been invited to be a panelist together with Professor Jomo and another professor from a private college to give comments on our good friend Lee Hock An's paper on the 50th anniversary of the new economic policy.
Right.
Yeah. So after this session ends, I have to go and write a press statement on this issue. I'll share with you later. Yeah, so I mean, that one I'm putting on my academic hat lah, and I think it's important to be able to ground some of the policy stuff in academic knowledge. Things like, I think somebody mentioned proportional representation as an electoral system, something that we may want to consider. But one of the things I find is necessary to balance the academic with reality lah. Because academic, everything is on paper. When the rubber reaches the road, right, you need to talk about it from a business perspective, from a political reality perspective. Those things need to be moderated by other realities, right? So whatever you learn about the constitution in law in whatever you learn about contract law in when you have to deal with actual clients, then suddenly other things come into play, right?
That's right.
So I mean, I think that's part and parcel of the renewal process, right? It's not just getting, giving opportunity for new leaders to step up within each party and coalition, but it's also bringing fresh blood. So for example, I think Kit Siang and also Guaning, they've been very encouraging of new people to join the DAP. I myself joined, and I was, very fortunate enough to be given a seat relatively soon. In my joining of the DAP, and DAP is a party that actually welcomes a lot of young people. Danish, one of our candidates is less than 30 years old. I didn't realize that our Ai Karo Adun was the youth exco. He's not even 30 yet. He's only 29. Right? So yeah, I mean, it's good to have all these young people, but it's also good to have people with experience, professionals such as yourself, to consider joining the political fray and contribute your experience in this area. I myself was a reluctant joinee to the political process, but finally, when I took the plunge, I think it's something that really was a very enriching experience. And for those people who are listening in, if you yourself don't see yourself to be in active politics, if let's say you have children who are teenagers, who are maybe in college, ask them to intern for a politician. DAP has an internship program that's open now. We always have it intakes twice a year. I sent a few of my interns down to help campaign in Melaka, and this year I took in more than 15 interns in my office. So to give the younger generation a taste of what politics is like, the hopefully more of the positive side rather than the negative side. Yeah.
And Ming, also, I think maybe one way of doing it is to get people to be more engaged with what's happening around them, right? Even it may not be party politics, but at least get people involved in like climate change issue, or at the school level, run for class monitor, or whatever school prefect should, the head prefect should be elected rather than appointed. Those kind of things that can start the ball rolling for young people. What do you think to get people involved in part of the political process?
Yeah, actually, that's very good. It's a very good suggestion. It's part and process of political engagement and political education.
Yes.
Right. So don't see politics as something that's only negative, because you hear a couple of crazy people shouting in parliament against each other in ways that don't make sense. But yeah, I mean, because when you talk about, let's say, electing your head prefect, right, it comes with certain levels of accountability.
Yes.
Right. If you elect that person, then that person will say, okay, you are chosen by, the head prefect should think, look, I'm not chosen by the teachers. I'm not chosen by the headmaster. I'm chosen by my peers. So I have to do a good job to be accountable to my peers, right? And then if let's say, the peers see that, okay, if this guy is not good or this girl is not good, then we obviously have a choice to replace him or her the next time round, or to make sure that whoever is going to, that we are going to vote, has the kind of attitude to be accountable to the student body. Right. And then you mentioned climate change. I think young people these days are much more concerned about these issues, regardless of race. So this is something that we need to translate into more actionable policies for them to do. Yeah, like doing more healthier stuff, doing things that can raise their awareness in terms of sustainability, going down kayaking in a river to see how dirty it is because people have thrown too much trash into it, So yeah lah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I guess that's way of reaching out to people, that kind of engagement.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe touch a bit on social media. Someone, Irwan Muhammad, Wabi Bangi, may I know if PH really a cyber trooper, so-called the PH media? We don't have a red bean army, like that's what you're asking. But each party has their own sort of like social media team. Ours is and publicity team lah. Ours is not very big. It's people, probably a team of about 10 people working at HQ. But yeah, we definitely don't have a paid red bean army lah. I think people were speculating that maybe last time there were more people that were under Rosma's payroll doing social media monitoring for her. But I think that one is you guys can speculate on the veracity of that. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, your any thoughts on sort of like social media and engagement on social media in as part and parcel of the larger political process?
Yeah, basically, I think social media should be a platform for engagement, where I think there must again be a two-way communication, where hopefully we can have more Zooms like this or more town hall session, maybe an e-town hall session where people can post questions, and I think politicians can able to field those questions. I think in the end of the day, it's not just social media, but engagement. I think that's a larger issue.
Correct. Yeah, those who follow me or want to follow me on Twitter at IMOKMAN, you can see that I'm actually I engage quite a lot on Twitter. For better for worse. But I mean that actually shows that you have somebody who is more genuine and more accessible through social media lah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's part and parcel of the sort of like engagement process. You're absolutely right lah. The two-way interaction actually counts a lot. But of course, us as politicians, we need to filter lah, because there are a lot of people who come to us, shouting at us, using foul language, and wanting us to respond to them. That one, I think, probably is something that we won't do lah. Yeah.
That's counterproductive.
Yeah.
I mean, on leadership renewal, I mean, there's a lot of issues on noises on the ground, whether basically because of what happened in Melaka. At the national level, do you see any changes in terms of strategy or even in coalition within PH? Would that trigger any changes?
I think each party needs to do some soul searching. Each party is also doing postmortems on their own. And I'm probably going to suggest to the PH Secretariat to do some sort of postmortem together lah. Whether that transpires or not is a different issue. So yeah, that kind of soul searching needs to happen. And at the same time, I do think that some of the more strategic minded people in each party should also maybe stick their necks out a bit lah. Like I'm not afraid of sticking my neck out because I think I came into politics not wanting to wanting to try and make a difference, like including from within my own party and my own coalition. So we should try to stick our necks out in terms of trying to propose certain ideas on how the party and the coalition should move forward. Right. So I've done that today, by sharing with you guys. I issued a press statement this morning. I was on BFM radio this morning talking about the need to have a new narrative, more compelling narrative and new models before the next general election. So this is something that each party and also the PH coalition will have to come to grips with as we move forward to the Sarawak state elections, which I think truth be told, I think we'll see a repeat of the Melaka performance where the incumbents in government will win very comfortably, where DAP would be able to retain most of our seats, but not make new headway. So that will be another blow for us. But we need to take that in stride and then move on to strategize for the next general election. Because time is short, we still have time, but time is running out. So yeah, those kinds of honest soul searching hopefully will lead to something more substantive lah. But I can only say from myself that I will continue to do all I can to speak out internally and also externally to see how I can play a role together with some of my more like-minded colleagues to bring about this new more compelling and alternative narrative before the next general election.
Speaking of that, there are some people from Melaka. I have a friend who says that maybe DAP should have more Malay candidates, or especially think about having a Malay candidate who can be a CM candidate for Melaka or a PM candidate even at the federal level. And questions like why, like for example, Danish, why was he fielded in Pangkalan Batu? Why not in a safe place like Bandar Hile so that he can have a better chance? What's your take on
that? I think it's a tricky road to go into, in the sense that we definitely want to feel more, Malay Indian candidates, good candidates that are capable. But at the same time, we are also cognizant of the fact that if we say, oh, we want to field a Malay candidate because we want him to be chief minister, then BN and PN guys will have a field day to say that, oh, you see, the DAP memperkudakan orang or calon Melayu nak jadi ketua menteri and all that. So it's something that we need to be tread very carefully lah. But as long as I think the party's direction and principles are good, that we know the kind of people that we want to attract into the party: hardworking, honest, capable, and likable people. I think we would be able to get a larger critical mass of good young candidates, including Malay candidates, that we can fill in different areas, both safe as well as maybe a little bit more risky seats. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Okay. Somebody is asking, if we look at the Philippines, there are movie stars becoming presidents. Ronald Reagan is another example. Perhaps PH should also consider engaging popular celebrities in their community work. I don't think we have an issue with engaging with celebrities to join the party. I think PKR recently also, a couple of famous Malay comedians joined them. I think we should not take that as some sort of a shortcut, because celebrities, they are not used to the political party process. And of course, they are more used to the way they do things as celebrities and how they are celebrated in their own way. So in politics, you get criticized a lot, you get whacked a lot. So celebrities may not be the best politicians, but if let's say they are aligned with our values, I think many of them can actually work together with us on common causes. May not have to be political causes. It may be things like charities, it may be things like political education and awareness that you talk about. And of course, if they want to stand out and campaign for us, we have no qualms about that, right? But yeah, it's and if you look at some of the examples of Filipino movie stars who have been involved in politics, it may not be such a good example to follow. Yeah. Okay, it's 9:50 already, 9:51. Any other questions that you want to cover, Ming, from the chat group?
Yeah, from the chat group. Yeah, let's see. Thanks for Yeah, I'm still looking through. But there's one thing I want to ask, which was a question asked on my Facebook. Because 2 days ago, I put on Facebook that, we talk about leadership renewal, in a political party, but sometimes the change must not just be in the political parties, it must be in the ordinary citizens as well. Because if we are not engaged in the process, if we are not even coming out to vote, then we cannot be expecting a handful of individuals to be basically making a better country for us. And somebody just posted a comment, Lalita, and she said, you know, I'm very sad about what's happening and I really want to have a better country. Please tell me what I can do as an ordinary citizen. You know, what do you have to say to about that? I mean, if people who are just ordinary people, but they want to see a better Malaysia, what can people do?
Actually, ordinary citizens can do a lot. If you want to be more involved in the political process, you can volunteer to be a pacha, to be a polling agent, counting agent during elections. You can get people to sign up to be voters. Because automatic voter registration is not quite here yet. You can join NGOs that does community outreach. You can, if let's say you're younger, you can, like I said, you can be an intern to a politician. If you're a little bit older, you can go and volunteer at the office of any of the politicians, regardless of which party, so that you can learn more about how to help the community. You can join think tanks that does a lot of policy work. That's more, for example, from the KL side. But yeah, I mean, you can contribute, in these kinds of discussions as well, informal discussions on how to build Melaka back better, for example. So yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do on a formal and informal manner that can increase your own political awareness and also your network, so that you can decide on how you may want to even further increase your level of engagement in the future. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe a couple of last few questions. We start at 10.
Sure.
Somebody asking, Muda can't register before G15. Yeah, they probably can't register before G15, but I think they have an important role to play, people like Syed Saddiq, because if let's say we have automatic voter registration and only 18 happen before the next general election, we will have a whole stream of new voters, 3-4 million of them coming into the electoral roll. So we need to have that narrative, that new narrative that can compel young voters to come and work with us, to come out to vote, to come out to support us. So this is something that the PH coalition needs to think about, how to incorporate younger leaders, younger activists, people from Muda and other from the only 18 movement even, to be part and parcel of the larger narrative for change in Malaysia, because the Muda itself, only 18 by itself, they cannot institutionalize or they cannot implement many of the reforms that I think they would like the country to move towards. Similarly, we also need the fresh ideas and energy of younger people. We are both in our late 40s, mid to late 40s already. I think it's time for the younger generation to come up and take the bull by its horns. Yeah. Okay. So 9:55. Any other? Okay. Maybe I address this. Jordan T asked, Tok Mahasan seems to play a good strategy. I think he's probably one of the bigger winners in this campaign. Tok Mahasan is the deputy president of UMNO. He's not an MP. He's just an adun in Negeri Sembilan. That is, he's an opposition adun. But I think he comes from the corporate sector. He used to be a CEO of Cycle and Carriage. So he obviously knows the business world. He made some money along the way in his corporate life. So he's seen as somebody that can lead UMNO in a direction that's different from his predecessors. And he's treading very carefully. But I think if, let's say, he can have a little bit more self-confidence to express a view for the country that is more inclusive, I think it will be good for his party and also for the country. But right now, I think he's been being very careful because he doesn't want to overshadow his president. And I think one of the benefits of the different things that's been happening in the country over the past 2-3 years, including the signing of the MOU, is what I said earlier, that even somebody like Zahid Hamidi, who has absolutely no reform credentials before this, he's talking about reforming UMNO, introducing reforms in the Melaka state government, including equal allocation for the opposition aduns. Right. So that's definitely something that is a positive outcome. I would say directly from the MOU that was signed in Perak, later on signed in Johor, and then at the federal level now. So I think with this kind of more mature politics happening in the country, we need to encourage more of these things to be supported, and then less of the kind of less inclusive and more provocative and racially exclusive policies from being given a disordinate amount of attention by the policymakers. Yeah.
So you do see hope for the country.
Oh yes, definitely. Definitely. But we need to communicate that hope regularly to the larger public, because if we don't, then people will lose hope lah.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why we're having this lah. We're having
That's
this.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think a lot of people just want to focus on the negative, and I think there's a lot of misinformation going around. But definitely from what we discussed tonight, I think that you see the needle moving, right, in a lot of issues, institutional reforms and all that.
Okay, so thanks for Ming. It's almost 10
Thank
o'clock
you.
already. I told you,
Yes.
right, the conversation will fly. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. It's been a pleasure. Yes.
Yeah. And for all those who are asking for PH clear strategy and all that, just read my article, Google Ong Kian Ming silver lining for PH. I've expressed some of my thoughts in terms of the more coherent narrative coming from PH through our top leaders. I think that will require a bit of time. Give us maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Hopefully some of the top leaders, Anwar, Guan Eng, Kit Siang, Mat Sabu, Anthony Long, they will come out and say something more substantive on how to move forward after this Melaka state elections. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thanks so much, all of you who came in. There were, at the height of this, I think there were about 97 to 100 participants on Zoom. And I'll check on the figures watching, in FB and YouTube. And the good thing about these conversations is that it's kept on record. So people can go back and listen to it on Facebook and on YouTube later on. Hopefully, we've not said anything that will get us in trouble in terms of the authorities. But I think our intentions are good, and I think most people who are listening to this can see that we are discussing things that will be good for the country, regardless of your political affiliation. And of course, since I'm from the DAP and PH, obviously I'll be reflecting more from the perspective of my own party and coalition. Yeah.
That's
okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. Good night, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.